big challenges that we face in addressing climate change. One is how to reduce waste, how to keep it out of landfills. The other is how to power our electricity-dependent economy without adding to climate change. Several companies are looking at ways to turn waste into energy to accomplish both goals at once, and I had the privilege of visiting one of them recently that's been being quite successful. How do they do it? Today we're going to find out from a woman crunching the numbers and tracking the money there. So pull up your chair, put on your earbuds, prepare to take notes. You might want to borrow some of their strategies. We'll see. Welcome to Electric Ladies Podcast. We share stories, insights, tips, and advice from remarkably innovative women working on the front lines of corporate responsibility, energy, sustainability, climate, and ESG-related issues. I'm your host, Joan Michelson. We talk about innovation, leadership, technologies, and careers, always bringing a new perspective. Find us anywhere you like to listen to podcasts, on our website, electricladiespodcast.com, and through my Forbes articles as well. And please pass it on to your friends and leave us a 5-star review if you're so inclined. It helps people find us. If you are at an inflection point yourself, looking for support with your ESG work or even in your career, please reach out to me. In all the chaos, there are lots of opportunities, and we don't want you flailing or missing out, right? We want you to take advantage of that. Please reach out to me on Twitter at Joan Michelson or LinkedIn and let me know. We can help you no matter what industry you're in. This episode is brought to you by Competent Boards, a comprehensive training program for board members and aspiring board members. Full disclosure, I am faculty, and I have the Sustainable and ESG designation certification. I truly recommend it. It's global, it's great networking, it gives you skills and strategic perspective, and frankly, the confidence needed for today's boardrooms and even in leadership roles, especially around the kinds of issues we talk about on Electric Ladies Podcast. And you can check it out at competentboards.com. The circular economy is a hot topic, right, these days. That is, using all the products and byproducts of a manufacturing or production process, and that includes waste. Agricultural waste is one of the worst emitters of CO2, and if left unaddressed, can, I think, probably hurt the soil, diminishing usability of the land. But we can also turn that waste into energy, as I said a bit ago. But how do we do it? It depends on the type of waste, of course, and it's, well, complicated. Let's find out from a woman who sits at the top of a company doing just that and even helping make our wines and food more sustainable in the process. Like, toast to that, right? I'd like you to meet Autumn Huskins, Finance Director at Hitachi Zosen Inova. Autumn has over 20 years of global experience in finance and general management, including waste to energy. HCI's global headquarters are in Zurich, Switzerland, but she is here today from Knoxville, Tennessee, bless her heart. And its parent company has been operating in the waste to energy space, get this, for over 100 years. I didn't even know they were doing this 100 years ago. I mean, please, with more than 1,600 projects worldwide, my goodness. It took only that long for the rest of us to catch up. That's depressing. Anyway, before HCI, Autumn spent about 15 years or so at GE and Alstom, which was acquired by GE, and other places. She earned her Bachelor's of Science Accounting, a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting from the University of Cumberland in Kentucky. When I first read Cumberland, I thought it might be the UK, but there you have it. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Autumn to our show. Welcome to Electric Ladies Podcast.
Hi, Joan. It's really great to be here today.
Thank you. And there's that Knoxville accent. I love it. It's so sweet. It's beautiful. So a 2020 study found that agricultural waste generates about 3% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's a big number. I didn't realize it was quite that high. They found that at least 1,300 million tons of agricultural waste is produced globally every year. So clearly we have a problem, right? And we need to address this to mitigate climate change. I had the privilege of visiting one of, as I mentioned in the intro, one of Hitachi's Zosen and Innova's plants in California earlier this year. And I got a bird's eye view of how your plants, or at least this one, works. People there, full disclosure, were terrific. They were very smart and helpful along the way. They were really nice. I like them. So let's start there. How does waste to energy in the HZI system actually work? Describe it to us.
Yeah, so basically, we're a green tech company providing sustainable solutions for our waste and turning that into energy. So, if I take the San Luis Obispo plant that you had the opportunity to visit as an example, so basically, we partner there with a waste hauler who brings in 36,000 tons of waste per year to us, diverting it from the landfill. That's then processed through our anaerobic digestion system and turned into electricity to power the grid there. That takes the waste, of course, out of the landfill. It powers 600 homes locally in San Luis Obispo. And additionally, the back end product there is an organic compost that then is put back on the fields of vineyards locally. So a definite good thing all around, and that community has really embraced that plant.
Yeah, we went to the vineyard, which I'll ask you about in a minute. We had a wonderful meal and stuff there. I didn't drink the wine because I hadn't had enough to eat by that point, but it was lovely and people were terrific. You said it powers 600 homes. So do the people that get power from this plant, do they know that their electricity is coming from a waste to energy plant?
So I don't know that the specific 600 homes know that, but there has been a huge initiative there locally to get out communication regarding the plant. There has been public outreach, public hearings. It's very, very well received. And while they may not know it's their specific home, they certainly know what the plant is accomplishing in the area.
Cool.
You know, I mentioned the compost. One of the things that we do as an outreach program is the compost. A couple of times a year is given away. People actually line up for miles with trailers attached to collect the compost. So it's been a huge positive thing for the community.
That's fascinating. Tell me about that. So this is the compost from that comes out of the whole process before it gets turned into converted to electrons?
So this is the after effect. So after the waste is processed through the facility, the end product is this organic compost. So this organic compost, which it is a revenue stream for these type of plants, and can be sold to local agricultural you know businesses, is also used in people's gardens. I mean, people will come and collect this for various purposes.
Wow. And it's a revenue stream. They sell it actually they're paying to take this. They're standing in line to pay to take it.
The community does not. We give this away free a couple of times a year as an outreach, but various businesses do. So various vineyards, various other businesses will pay to take this compost. So there is a revenue stream associated with that.
Okay. So people who just live locally can just stand in line during those times to get it, but
Correct.
the businesses have to pay for it. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Um, So, and I mean, we're short circuiting a process. I mean, on your website, you have a cool video about it. You've got some good graphics about it. And I took some pictures, but kind of explain a little bit. Let's try to make it visual for people a little bit of how this works. So you pick up, like we went to this winery and I thought that the winery was giving their agricultural waste to the plant. Well, they may be using the byproduct also, but they're giving their so let's say that farm or that vineyard gives their waste. So there's certain ways it gets picked up, right, from the from the winery, and then kind of what happens. If you could describe it a little bit to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. So in San Luis Obispo in particular, we partner with the local waste hauler there, Waste Connections. So Waste Connections, at the start of the process, they will collect waste from businesses as well as households. That waste is separated into multiple bins. So at that plant, we take two types of waste. We take green waste. So if you think about yard clippings or various other green waste, we take that as well as food waste. So something that you would typically throw out or compost, we take that. So the community there has received education on separating that into various bins for collection. 36,000 tons of that is then delivered per year to our plant and processed through the anaerobic digestion system. So they bring the waste in, they weigh it, it goes into our receiving hall. That is then processed through our equipment and turned into the energy that's transmitted to the grid. So.
Okay, that's yeah. People will have, if they really want to map it, they'll have to go and look it up. But how does it actually get to the grid? Does the plant have a direct relationship with whatever the electric company is in that area? Or does it hook up to transmission lines? How does that happen?
So there's interconnectivity gets it into the grid. We have a 20-year supply contract with a local utility. And as part of the building of the plant, there was connectivity there to transmit that directly to them per that contract.
Oh, so they connect directly in order to fulfill the contract. Oh, that makes sense. So that you're not just trying to figure it out. I love that. Um, So talk about you know the winery that I'm talking about, the vineyard that I'm talking about in San Luis Obispo. I think it's Wolf Cross, something like that, vineyard. Um, yeah, I'll have to look up the name of it. But do you know how they work? Do they have their a specific partnership there? I mean, they showed us that when your folks gave us a tour, right? So they're familiar with it. But are you familiar with, are they taking the electricity as well as and giving you their waste on both sides? Or are they, in other words, are they giving you their waste and then getting the electricity and the compost, both, all three?
So I don't know about the electricity side of things. I mean, as we said, we're just transmitting to the grid. We don't know where that energy is going directly. The relationship there would be, though, that since they're in the area, we cover basically 13 jurisdictions there in California where we're collecting the waste. So yes, their waste would be part of that stream that comes into the plant. And then where they're getting usage on the back end is that they're receiving that compost to go into their fields. So while I can't talk directly about whether the electricity is going there, we do know that we're getting their waste in and then the compost is going back to them. So.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's terrific. Is it just you mentioned green waste and food waste. So you don't collect any other types of waste. You don't collect any other recyclables and have to, because I noticed that there was an area that kind of separated out any metals that showed up in anything and things like that. But you're not actually you're literally only taking green waste and food waste. You're not processing anything else, right?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah, the magic of turning this into electrons. It just feels like magic to me. I'm fascinated by it. Um, what do you find is the biggest driver of companies wanting? I mean, you have been doing this 100 years, which kind of blows my mind. But what does the company find are the biggest drivers of adopting these kinds of waste to energy technologies? And obviously, things have changed over the last few years, right? But over time, what makes companies say, "Oh, well, I want to do this," or even think of it?
Yeah. So I think that, there's an element of people want to be good stewards, right? People want to do the right things for their communities. There's certainly pressure more now than ever from shareholders and customers and regulatory bodies around this type of thing. I mean, right now, I think about 50% of the states have mandates where they're trying to divert waste from landfills, and we give them the opportunity to do that. But at the end of the day, from a company perspective, people are after one thing, right? And that's a profit. And we give them the avenue to take something that historically has been maybe an inconvenience in waste and turn that into an opportunity to, make them some money, whether that be selling energy to the grid, whether that be putting energy back into the operations of their facilities, and various other streams. So what could have cost them money in the past can now be a huge benefit. And at the same time, you're doing something great for the world and our future. So.
Absolutely. So how do they get paid? So they don't they pay HCI to pick it up?
So in the case of San Luis Obispo, there's something called a tip fee where we collect a fee for taking the waste, basically. So, if you think about the waste industry, whether you're taking it to a landfill, whether you're taking it to a composter or taking it to one of our types of facilities, there would be a fee associated with that. But then there's also the revenue stream of, providing whether it be gas or electricity to a grid or into a pipeline, whether it be a reduction of cost because you're using that energy in your facility. But and then there's also what I mentioned as the back end revenue of whether you're producing a compost or a liquid fertilizer or CO2. There can be an off stream for that as well.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I was going to ask you about and I'll get to that in a second about some of the other revenue streams because it's intriguing. Um, do they know, how can I say this? So your HCI is sending electrons to the grid, but then the houses are being powered, and I assume there's some local businesses that are being powered that way too. So how does it reduce the locals' energy bill if they don't know where it's coming from?
I don't know that it does reduce their energy bill. I mean that.
Oh, I thought you just said it reduces the one of the incentives was to
No,
lower their
no.
energy
So
bill.
if we think about the case of a business, right? So imagine that you have a business who's going to install one of these anaerobic digester systems for use in their facility. So instead of, the case like San Luis Obispo where it goes back to the grid, instead of that type of case, the power or the energy could also go back into your facility. So in
Oh,
that case, so if you think about a distillery or a brewery where you could install one of these installations and you're building this facility specifically for their use. So in that case of the circular economy, you're taking the waste directly from their facility. You're using that to create energy, and then you're feeding that energy right back into their operation. So in that case, it wouldn't go to the grid, but it's going to go to their business as a cost reduction because they're fueling their own
oh,
business.
yeah, I love that. It's almost like solar panels, that go right into your home. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
thank you. I appreciate it. So that's not an external equipment, that's equipment they have on site.
yeah.
Thank you. That really helps. Are companies looking to leverage the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Investment Act for financial incentives and funding to do this? I mean, are they looking for ways to, I mean, because they have to pay to do this, right? So, but they get benefits from that either in tax credits or sometimes funding if they meet certain criteria. So are you finding that, is HCI finding that companies are coming to them and saying, well, we're leveraging, or asking you how to leverage the IRA or the infrastructure bill?
Absolutely. So the IRA has been a really positive thing for the market. A lot of cases where companies may have been considering this, but the financial model didn't exactly make sense. The IRA has helped push those projects across the finish line, right, by providing some assistance. The downside, I would say, that we're seeing with the IRA is that when it came out, there was maybe some unclearness or some limited guidance that needed to be clarified. And unfortunately, it has this really restrictive timeline where it's set to expire at the end of the year. And with the current political climate, we don't know, will that be extended? Will it expire? What's that going to look like? So while it's this super positive thing, a lot of companies, stopped what they were doing as well because they don't know exactly what it means, or they don't know how it can help them, or they stopped waiting on additional guidance. And now we're seeing in the fall of this push, because of the expiration date at the end of the calendar year, for people to get the progress that they need to be able to claim these incentives. So if I look at the market overall, I would say, we need more of that, right? We need more incentives. We need more regulations around this because, in the past in my career, it's been kind of described to me as road signs, right? Like if you're driving down the road and there are no road signs, you're either going to stop or you're going to keep doing exactly what you're doing, right? Because there's no guidance telling you to do something different. And we really need a world to put that guidance in place, to make that guidance clear, to give us enough time to work with it, and give companies time to understand it. So, it's a huge positive thing, but it's also limited.
Yeah, I totally get that. I totally get that. And one of the things that's intriguing to me is that um, I actually believe that even if the GOP wins the election, which is what I'm assuming people are concerned about, not knowing what's going to happen to them, whether they'll be extended or not, is that there are so many communities that are Republican led or dominated that are getting so much money from all these programs. I mean, you're in Tennessee, right? So if communities in Tennessee want to keep these programs, their Congress people, their senators have to be responsive to that. So they're going to say, well, no, we don't want to kill this part because we like this, where we like the jobs, we like the revenue, we like the, whatever. They might not make the climate change argument, but they'll protect it because they're making money, they're creating jobs, and it's good for the community, right? Mm-hmm. So I would also flip it over and say the customers that are doing it can help protect it and keep it going and encourage the expansion of it by showing how effective it is and how useful it is for the communities, right? Is this a scaling? I mean, you mentioned about 50 states that have regulations on this stuff. So are there more? I mean, the plant that I saw in California, 600 homes is a lot, but it's only 600 homes, right? So how is that being scaled, and what's the potential for scaling of a technology like this? I would imagine there's some inherent limitations, but what does scaling this look like?
Absolutely. I mean, the plant in San Luis Obispo is actually a very, very small plant. Most of the other developments that we're working on are substantially larger than that. These digesters, that digester there, most of the time you're going to have multiple digesters, which increase the tonnage and increase the amount of, waste that you can take and energy that you can produce. So, it's scaled without difficulty. I would say the one restriction is the permitting process. So of course you have to have it permitted for the amount of waste that you plan to take. So that's where the hurdle comes in. But otherwise you can have multiple digesters, and it's just a matter of having land and available waste.
Boy, that, permitting is the bugaboo of this whole thing, isn't it? I know you're not a regulatory person, but are you familiar with the permitting bill that Senator Manchin, that Senator Barrasso are trying to get passed right now? Do the permitting bills that you've seen or you're aware of, do they include this kind of technology or do they cover it in some way? Do you know? Because
I
permitting is huge.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't know the answer to that, but it is huge and it's something that, can take a lot of time. So what we see when we're developing these projects is that they tend to be developed over years, right? Because the permitting is a very slow process.
Yeah, and then you have to build it, right? So it takes time. One of the other things I was thinking about with the IRA and the infrastructure bill are talent. Is there a way there's Justice 40, right? And there's this big push to try to transition people from uh, jobs that might be reduced or displaced workers, right, from this transition. Is there a way for you guys to use, or are you already trying to recruit talent that might be coming from some of the energy technologies that are being phased out or other technologies that are being phased out to try to, I mean, can they transfer their skills into this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have certainly recruited from all areas of the energy world, I would say. A large segment of our talent previously worked in the coal-fired power plant industry. So we are bringing in engineers from various other areas that have, in many cases been downsized in the past as related to, a more dying energy market and getting to give them new life in the renewable space, which is very, very exciting.
Oh, I'm sure. And you're one of them because you were at Alstom, right? So you're a product of that transition
Absolutely.
in some
Absolutely.
ways. And yeah, and I know some people who were at Alstom too. We can talk about um the you mentioned a bit ago, and I want to ask you a couple things and then we'll get to some career advice. But you mentioned a bit ago fertilizer. So are people are there other components of this process that are marketable? So there's the electrons going to the grid, and then there's the compost that companies are using. But is your compost also maybe being picked up by the Cargills of the world or the Monsantos in some way or whoever, smaller companies to be made into organic fertilizer or something like that? Or what other uses can people have for this? Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know the specifics of what it can be made into, but I do know that there's a market for that, right? That this stuff can be picked up on the back end and transformed into other things. I mean, I mentioned, I think early on CO2, which is something that we've just created a new partnership with a company on. And then that CO2 can be picked up and used for dry ice or fertilizer or air conditioning, various other things. So there's a lot of ways this can be utilized and a lot of things that it can be made into.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, carbon capture. That's really interesting. That's smart, actually. So, before we ask you some advice, you're a numbers cruncher person, right? You're a financial person. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of reporting that has to happen now. I mean, it's one of those things that's changed over the last 100 years, right? So I want to ask you about this constellation of reporting things. We've got the SEC climate risk disclosure rules, which I know are on hold, but there's still going to be something. And then this plant that I was at is in California, which has these tremendous new climate laws in effect. And then there's this alphabet soup of ESG reporting frameworks and standards, and you're in international companies, and the ISSB and the GRI and the TCFD. So, what's your take on the frameworks right now? What's your take on the California laws? And is that, how is that affecting the business and the adoption of people to use this kind of waste to energy system?
Yeah, so we're lucky that California is, a bit progressive. So not only did we get, our first plant on the ground in that state, but the state also supported that with various grants that were received to help financially. So, it's one of the things that we haven't necessarily talked about. We talked a little bit about the IRA, but we haven't talked about, the fact that states and local governments can also help with this by putting incentives in place, right? And then also, one of the things that I saw early on when I joined the company was that there was this huge anticipated market in California because of some of the regulations, but then that slowed down a bit because we weren't seeing those things enforced. So they had put some of the regulations in place, but then there was delays in enforcement of those. So we need to ensure that not only are states and local governments supporting this with incentives of various kinds, but also, by then the compliance side of things by monitoring that. And, we talked early on, and you mentioned the company's been in business for 100 years with 1,600 reference plants. And unfortunately, it's been slow to get to North America, right? So we're also seeing with ESG and all of that it's hitting Europe and other parts of the world a lot quicker than it's getting to us. So I say all that to say, yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of reporting. And if you get these financial incentives, if you get grants and other things, there's even more reporting, right? But it's worth it because it really helps to push this forward.
Are you finding that the reporting is a driver? In other words, people, because I've had people, executives come to me and say, well, now, over 50% of our RFPs are requiring us to report our sustainability profile. So we have to get on, we have to collect this data in that kind of format, organized way. And therefore we need to do X, Y, and Z. And now we're seeing the number. It becomes it has its own cascading effect throughout the business. So are you finding that the other way works too, that the need to report is actually having people go, oh, wait a minute, we have all this waste that's just a cost. Let's explore how we can use it and that kind of thing?
I'm not seeing it to a large extent yet, but I expect to. I expect to see that grow as the reporting requirements grow.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. It's interesting. I interviewed Cindy Ortega, who was CSO of a big MGM Resorts International at the time. She left there and she's retired now, but she told me that she had been CFO and she got into sustainability because she saw the numbers and said, wait a minute, we're spending $86 million a year on electricity. This is dumb. And there's all these other systems that we can use. And she ended up negotiating MGM Resorts International out of Nevada Power and essentially becoming their own utility so that they could be more innovative. And it was a groundbreaking deal that she did. It's really extraordinary. So it comes from, all of the money, right? You're the money lady, so they're gonna come to you and go, what are the numbers on this on them, right? So
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see if that happens. What's your take on the SEC rules and the climate laws? Do you think they're obviously they have to bundle through the system, more, and we have to see what happens with the lawsuits. But just as the laws as they are stated and the rules as they're stated, what's your sense?
I'm honestly not up to speed enough to
Okay.
have a take on that, unfortunately.
No, that's okay, but I would imagine that um, some of the ways of the tracking the numbers will, be affected by how those lawsuits come down. Until the lawsuits are settled, it's a little bit of a moot point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you about uh, career advice for mid-career women. And what I think about is a woman who has maybe 12, 15 years of career experience. She's got an education. She knows what she's good at. She's ambitious, wants to advance in her career, wants to make money, and wants to make a difference,
Yeah.
and doesn't feel that it should be a trade off. So, what advice would you give to her?
So the career advice that I've always had for anyone that has asked me is, I've been lucky enough in my career to hold a lot of different positions and continue to advance. And never once have I set out to do that. My take is that you go to work every day in the job that you're in. You do your absolute best. You give your all to that particular position, and the positions will follow. Now, that I've been lucky enough to have that happen within a few companies without having to bounce around. I don't know that that's always the case. I mean, sometimes you may have to look for that next move with a different company. But I think that hard work, dedication, and I don't care what your role is. I don't care if you're, the janitor or the CEO. I think you approach the job the same way and do the best that you can possibly do, and it'll work out.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I think also what happens is even if you don't stay in the same organization like you have, you get noticed by other companies. Like you, I'm sure you were noticed by Hitachi, Zosen, Inova, when you were at GE and doing that kind of work. And so you get noticed by other people and I mean, that's, what recruiters do, right? So, um, and it's interesting that you said what you said because so often so many so much career advice is have confidence and whatever, and it's like, okay, but you got to do your job.
I
You have to
mean,
be
what
good at your job.
Yeah, and what I see is that, I see people start their careers or get to mid-career and they're always looking for that next move, right? And I think that when you're doing that, sometimes, unfortunately, you can lose sight of doing a good job in what you're doing that day. And it can end up costing you more than it can help. And so my advice has always been consistent, and it's been what's worked for me very well in my career. So
Obviously, you've done very well. That's great. Well, any final thoughts before I let you go back to your life, Autumn?
no, I don't think so. I just really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today. I mean, it's so exciting for me, coming out of a business that was dying to get to come into this business that's, fresh in North America to an extent, getting to grow that business and getting to do something good for the world. I mean, it's inspiring. So,
Oh, I bet it is. That's beautiful. That's a great way to look at it. And that's what made me fall in love with this industry as well was, cool, smart people doing amazing things, making money, having fun, and making the world a better place all at once. It's like, what's not to like, right? Can't do better than that. So thank you so much for joining us today on Electric Ladies Podcast, Autumn Huskins of Hitachi Zosen Inova. Thank you. I really, really appreciate it.
thank you.
So, what would you put? Would you put your compost waste into a system that turned it into energy? What questions do you have for Autumn? Let us know. Post it to us on Twitter and threads at Joan Michelson. Send us any questions there as well. You may win a complimentary 30-minute coaching session with me. And please subscribe to our mailing list to stay abreast of our amazing guests like Autumn, our articles, and career advice. You can subscribe on our website, electricladiespodcast.com. Thank you for joining us. I'm Joan Michelson. See you next time.